and he will talk about blocks for bricks, the thoughts on DePIN in the built environment. So I give the stage to you. Thank you. Yes.
Click works. Yes, hello. Blocks for bricks. Mark asked me for my presentation, and I didn't know really what I wanted to talk about, so I used a very generic title, so I could still fit the content. Blocks for bricks. Oh, yeah, blocks for bricks is because of my background. I'm a civil engineer. We talked a bit about civil engineering. I know a lot about the built environment, and I did my PhD on blockchain applications for construction and within the built environment. So I'll share a bit about some of the interesting use cases for blockchain in the built environment, but I think more than just talking about the work that I did, I want to share with you some thoughts I have on where DePIN could fit in that whole picture that I have for blockchain in the built environment, and also give you maybe some additional motivation and use cases that built environment is actually maybe a very good application for DePIN. So maybe just not to make the problem a bit bigger, our very provocative statement a bit, maybe our climate goals depend on the built environment. I'll show you some numbers. So 32% of our global final energy demand is used by the built environment. 36% of energy-related GHG emissions in the EU now are related to our operations in the built environment. And then an additional, this is already quite bad, and we significantly need to reduce the impact, but 50% of the buildings we will need in 2050 are not yet built. So this problem will only worsen, and if you think about the built environment, what it actually is, it's a lot of infrastructure. It's buildings, it's infrastructure that we use, and decentralized physical DePIN is all about infrastructure, but you mostly think about GPS devices, maybe a bit small. So I just want to maybe broaden a bit the picture to also that you think a bit about more what else is there as infrastructure solutions that we could apply maybe these kind of concepts. So in essence, we need a lot of new infrastructure, but we also need to improve the existing infrastructure. Climate change also has an impact on this infrastructure. They need to become more resilient so they can withstand the new conditions. And it's not so easy to deliver this kind. If you just look at this road intersection, for example, it's quite complicated to plan and build and operate such a thing. And even when you need to reimagine how you want to build it, you need to deal with a very complex stakeholder environment that for now often fails to deliver very effective new solutions. There are often a lot of protocols how to deliver existing solutions, how you do it now, but to reimagine a bit how you can do it is quite hard sometimes. And the second problem I want to highlight is the high cost of finance, like the high cost of this infrastructure. We are very spoiled in Switzerland. We have a lot of money for infrastructure, but in many parts of the world, this money is just not there. And the new infrastructure often fails, like just with financing. Of course, there's many more problems that I just ignore for now because I don't think DePIN can solve them, or not like in a big regard. For example, regulatory and institutional barriers, or of course also, it's not just these two problems, that's what I just want to say. So when I don't know how many of you remember this cover back in 2015, it was basically one of the motivation I had back at the time to look into blockchain as a potential solution to some of these challenges in the built environment. And together with the digital solutions that are rapidly advancing also in the built environment, I think we can actually use this technology also and apply it in the built environment. Like, I don't know how much you know about these kind of technologies. We have something called building information modeling, where we try to digitally represent buildings mostly for construction, but then also for operations. It's then often the term digital twins that is used, like with direct feedback from the buildings within sensors. So this is then connected to the smart buildings term that you all know. So the data is more and more, like the technologies that would needed to connect these technologies with the built environment are emerging, which gives us an opportunity for some new use cases. And this is some of the work I did. I just want to highlight two of them. We have some work on performance-based contracts. We think that the servitization model that is applied in other industries, for example, in aviation, that you don't buy turbines for airplanes, you lease them on a performance contract and only pay per use and per performance, could be applied also more in the built environment. They're often just built, then sold to the customer, and they're left alone with all the problems. And sometimes these buildings, they don't perform that well as they were designed. And I think more service-oriented performance contracts could solve that in the built environment, but they're very hard to set up with traditional finance systems. They need to be very long-term. Sometimes you don't even know your customer in the end. So how do you deal with that? I think some of the characteristics of blockchain could help there. And then I have a project management background. I think just the way you deliver these projects there is ways to deliver these projects which are called collaborative project delivery that is more and more aligned with some of the mechanisms we also see in the DAO space and in the Web3 space. And there is the connecting factor is Ostrom. We heard a bit about that before. So there is some work from my professor that identified elements of Ostrom's work in collaborative project delivery, and at the same time there is work that identified Ostrom principles in DAO structures, and we tried to connect that a bit. And I think it's quite an interesting comparison of the two models, and I think it could go both ways. I think DAOs could maybe learn a bit more from how we deal with project delivery in construction. We deliver a lot of projects, and we have some experience what works, what doesn't. And at the same time, I think some of the existing collaborative project delivery structures in construction could maybe benefit from some of the Web3 mechanisms. I'll leave it at that. So I think there is a lot of applications for blockchain in the built environment, but one of the main challenges that I observed is basically the physical nature of it. So you need very fast feedback loops between the physical and digital system to actually make these new governance or finance tools possible. And I think DePIN can be very much an enabler for that we don't have just smart individual buildings, but we kind of scale this to larger data availability to actually apply these tools in a built environment. And I think it's all related to collection, maintenance, and storage of data. So this is maybe one approach. This is the Nest building at Empa where I work. It's one of the most advanced smart buildings, just for context. And I think the second application I see, and this is maybe also a bit a handover to Una, maybe I saw she will also present later, is the idea that you could use DePIN also as a paradigm shift in the built environment. This is more related to the financing maybe a bit. So if every time you pass these toll roads on a road, you probably deal with a public-private partnership between a government, a state, or some other form of governmental institution together with an industry partner. Because such roads, they're very expensive, and instead of the government paying for them, which is often the case in Switzerland, they give this to a private institution. They build this road, they privatize it, they deliver the service agreed with the government, but they also earn money. So this kind of idea that you hand over infrastructure, not just handed by the government to someone else, is already there, but it's often private institutions. And I think there is an opportunity to cut that out maybe and make this more community oriented. And this could also, together with the other, bring in like aspects of more sustainable and community-driven infrastructure development for actually the purpose that people want, instead of some of these profit-driven elements that we often see that often fail to deliver some of the other purposes. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. It was more also a bit brainstorming. I hope you found it nevertheless useful. But I thought in light of tomorrow that we have more discussion, I share more that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If anybody has a question, I think one would be good. If not, I would just recuperate some time, okay?